Have you ever wondered what's in the secret sauce that takes a good company and makes it great? On this episode, Be Courageous founder and CEO Kyle Hermans shares his personal recipe for taking your business to the next level. Listen and learn how to be a better leader and make a lasting impact.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Leverage Members webinar. Today we have a very, very, very special guest. He's a personal friend of mine for many years, actually married to one of my oldest friends, Jenna, and super interesting background. Kyle, you've done TEDx talks before, right?
Yeah.
TEDx speaker, head of innovation from Gap, was head of employee engagement for Old Navy. Is that right?
Employee experience, yeah.
Employee experience at Old Navy, and now he runs a consulting company called Be Courageous, where he trains entrepreneurs in all of these methodologies, how to be a better leader, how to improve culture within your organization, and how to just be better prepared for the future. So thank you so much for joining today, Kyle.
Oh, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Was I accurate with my intro? I'm sure I missed out like a million other things that we could have mentioned on that.
You know, I love it. I love how it gets interpreted differently each time. It's because yes, it's a yes and. You know, it's one of those things where like pick a lane. It's like why we can do so many cool things. The way I like to frame it, where we framed it, because there's a couple of different dimensions of things work, and you did amazing, Nick. Thank you. Is just is that we're in the service of helping people reach their breakthrough. And so we are really looking to own the space of breakthroughs, and specifically in areas of culture. You know, if you're growing a business or you're looking to better your leaders and teams, if you are breakthroughs in strategy. So how do you get to your future faster? You know, how do you activate growth for your company? And then innovation is the other real key pillar area of breakthrough, which is, you know, liberating those possibilities for your company and getting your products and services out and doing it in a unique way, you know, linked to real strong market and consumer insights. So it's all about breakthrough. If teams or leaders or organizations, whether you start up, scale up, or a Fortune level company, and you've reached the capacity of your own internal tools and thinking, and it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just, you know, we can only take on and do so much. Then our team usually comes in some sort of an intervention facilitation way and helps to guide the team to push them through that breakthrough threshold to get them to their next level, and then hands all of that back to them for them to own that result. So
I love that example that you shared with me when we had lunch the other month, where you were saying that you worked with I think it was a gas company, and you were saying, you know, what is the future of
solar? Oh yeah,
no, it was the impact of self-driving cars and the sales from like the mini marts at gas stations, and how people need to be prepared strategically, like be thinking, okay, what is the future with the self-driving cars? And if you're running Chevron, how does that impact Chevron because of self-driving cars? And I thought that was a really interesting example. It's probably just one of a million examples for every different type of industry, but it was a good way of thinking about it, because it was like, holy shit, yeah, that's kind of obvious, but it's not something I'm walking around thinking about.
Yeah, it was thinking about, if you think about it was linked to some work we're doing with Singularity University. Actually, we've just become some faculty at Singularity, which is great, helping them on thinking about exponential leadership and exponential enterprises. And it's very, very exciting to be playing in those worlds. One of the format or the framework is about implications, and I'm sure there are, you know, people on the call or whoever will tune into this recording will understand the exercise of implications. And if you don't, then what you would do with this is, if you say, okay, there's a big trend happening, autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles, you'd put that in the center, and you start to think of all the implications, both positive and in some way, you know, changes or negative impacts, you know, like challenging impacts that this new trend or this new system that is now fast becoming embedded exponentially, it's not going to go away. It's now here to stay. what is the implication of that? So if you write down self-driving car in the center of this, okay, implication is like, well, the driver doesn't have to be concentrating, so they get to do more work. So you start to, the implication is, well, what's going to now show up inside of a car? But then also, if you think about their journey, if you're doing long trips and you don't have to worry about driving, well, and if it's going to be electric versus gas, you're going to stop less frequently at gas stations. You're going to not need stimulants and energy drinks and on-the-road snacks. And so you'll start to see that how one thing embeds into a world will start to implicate industries and things that we are used to. If you take like Amazon's purpose, their overall arching purpose, which I love, is reinvent normal. And so when you think about this in the future, if you think about what they're doing, they're trying to take every industry, find what the future implications are for them, and how can they just normalize what we might see as advanced. How can they normalize that from 8-day delivery to now 1-day delivery to 1-hour delivery? And now, if we don't get that in the rest of the industries, the implications are we're going to stop using those products and services and start to go towards people that are offering us things that feel more normal and more regular. So that example I was giving you is like, if you think of the implications of autonomous vehicles, it's going to impact a lot of things that we don't realize. So for any industry, young company or big company, if you put the implication of your service, you can actually start to track opportunities, later down the line that you could potentially own, or it can also give you some kind of, it's in some way it's a little bit of a guess game, but often, you create the future, as we like to say, which is it also helps you to anticipate where competition might be coming from and how to not just protect, but actually how to get ahead of your technology or your innovation.
So are there particular industries that you specialize in, or you literally, it doesn't really matter the size of the company or the industry someone is in, you help them have their own breakthroughs no matter what walk of life they're coming from?
Yeah, through my career, I did specialize in some places. I specialized in fast-moving consumer goods, so more retail goods, consumer products, and in particular retail, so it was fashion and food, and then consumer products, things that we ate, like a lot of things that we would eat and drink. I spent a lot of time in that. I also actually spent a bunch of time in technology developments. So as automation and platforms and algorithms and things like that were coming on. And then funnily enough, actually in government organizations. So when they talk about policies and systems, so I thought about it more in a systems place, like how do you create a larger system by which many people can subscribe to that same system and it can be effective for all. But right now, what we found is with the frameworks and the tools and the processes that we have, it's really applicable to any size of business and any type of industry, which is interesting because we, instead of niching into an industry, saying we're specializing in automotive or we're specializing in, foot retail, or we're specializing in, like energy consumer drinks or something like that, we're now moving to those three areas, which is we realize that companies that are trying to create something new, they've either discovered a technology or an innovation, which is why we talk about the innovation, and they want to get that out most effectively to a market. And the way that they have to do that is by connecting with their customer, which often relates to strategy. And then once they've formulated the product and that strategy, that way to get it out to market with that business model, and that strategic plan with those metrics that they want to grow into, one of the most important things is to bring your culture that you're building, even if you're a team of 3 or 5 or all the way up to, I think the biggest we worked with is like, say, 240,000 employees as a Fortune culture. You have to bring that culture along with you because they're the ones that have to do the work to keep pushing your product into the market, that execute on the strategy, that make your customer happy, that make your product thrive. So we look at it more from that level now, and of course, what ends up happening is we tailor more to specific industries because those industries get word that we are helping one company get some breakthroughs in retail or consumer product, and then more consumer products will reach out. But we're open to pretty much working with any size and any industry.
Do you find that there's like a common pattern or like a particular problem within companies that reach out to you? I mean, obviously every company has their own issues, but is there like one thing that in particular is something that most companies need to get better at doing that you found?
Yeah, we did some research as we launched Be Courageous. We did some deep insights into, or some deep sort of research into that. And one of the things that we found was right now customers want to, I think we put it into a statement that was something like customers want to get to their future, or our clients want to get to their future faster while staying ahead of their competition and actually building a long-lasting, sustainable brand that ends up helping them have some magnificent exit, because that's kind of like the big game right now. Make something impactful, put it out into the market, either get bought out by somebody bigger or become a big thing yourself. And so their thing is staying relevant. We found that staying relevant, the concept of growth, like drivers for growth, how do I grow my market share? How do I grow my impact to customers? While keeping the essence of my original, purpose and the heart of the original idea. Because as you know, with the bell curve, I'm sure for those on the call here, for those with the bell curve, as soon as you bring something into the market, after a while, when people live with that new cutting edge thing that you've made or embedded, the natural flow of a human being is to embed that into our world, and then we just want to keep evolving as people. We want to keep doing more and growing more. So whatever that perfect situation was, will at some point have some conflicts. So if you think about the first time, say you got your iPhone, it was perfect. And then at some point it was like, oh, I wish it had more battery. Oh, I wish it wouldn't break every time I dropped it. Oh, I wish. So there's some trade-offs that start to happen. And so I find that one of the things that companies come to us the most with is that they were having a really good run, and then customers or the market started to trade something off in order to, they either traded something that they were doing and to get something else, or they traded them off as a company in order to get another benefit that they weren't receiving from that company that they were originally getting because they lived too much into it. So we're asked to, majority of the time, help people continue to grow and stay connected with not just their employees but their customers. So getting to your future faster, while maintaining a covetable, evangelized brand is probably at the heart of a lot of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a bit of consulting, and what I found in mine, and I do a different type of consulting than you, right? I'm much more focused on like implementing technologies or being more efficient. I'm not trying to help them strategize what they're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years from now, or the impact of self-driving cars. It's really like, how can I save you an hour here or there? But on that side, I found a common pattern in my consulting is that people are really bad at communication and at project management. And if you can just clean that up on the tech side of things and teach people how to use email effectively, or Slack for team communication, and then tools for project management, it solves like 80% of the, I mean, obviously everyone's excited by automation, but solving those two things really, I found, are the two keys to getting someone to the next level with their company.
This is why I love communicating with you. I love Leverage. I love what you guys do too, because what we're finding is that this is the hard thing about innovation, and why we are now tactically so much more in the creation, helping create the content and actually seeing things to market, or seeing things to action. Because I spent 15, 16 years of inventing some of the most amazing things with clients all over the world, and then seeing that maybe 95% of that would not get implemented. And the 5% that did get implemented, only a couple of percent of that would actually make it to market. And the fear factor, the resistance, and then the complexity that a good idea has to roll into in terms of a complex matrix of an organization, that efficiency is what kills it. And there are so many amazing situations that companies have just let go because they didn't have a leverage, they didn't have that. And so we're trying to figure out now, the work we're doing is getting into a more strategic point, but we live in a premise that somebody's only going to implement what they make if they own the breakthrough themselves. If I own a client's breakthrough, I have a 50-50 chance that they are not going to do anything with it. But if they own it and we just help facilitate them to it, that's when it's almost 100% chance that they will implement it, because it's so big. Where the perfect partnership with somebody like Leverage, I know we've chatted about this, is then to cascade that into the business. You have to set up these bite-sized, I use this acronym of how do you eat a whale. Apologies for any vegetarians on the call. It's like, how do you eat a whale, which is one bite at a time. But when you're trying to take on something so big, you have to do it in small bites in order to reach this very complex future that you want to live into. And you can only do it through these tools of efficiency. So the two sides that we see, which is you're 100% correct, which is how do we just optimize our business? We often start with culture there, which is just the way they think and how they start to behave with each other, what processes and systems they have. Most of the time, they have to reinvent their operating models, because their operating models aren't designed to accept the new ideas, for them to cascade in, which is why, in your world, that's so important, a system like yours. The counter side is that people are so down in the detail of project management and these small micro moments of efficiency that they forget the big picture. Mm-hmm. So where we come in is we help elevate that altitude. So to bookend those two things are critical, which is why partnering with someone like yourselves and your teams are really important.
You've worked with a lot of companies, and some including, you were reporting to the CEO of Gap when you were at Gap. Yeah,
that's right.
Of all the companies you've worked with, which is the one that you found to be most interesting or most exciting to work with, and why?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. Wow. Who did I find most interesting and why? Actually, I've got to work with some of the really, really big brands. I got to work with Google early stages. I actually worked directly with Chris Sacca, who is head of special initiatives, for those that know Chris. And we were working on net neutrality. What was that?
The shark on Shark Tank.
Yeah. Yeah, we were actually working on net neutrality, because although this has now come up again this year, it came up several years ago where there was a big fight for net neutrality. And that was an insanely interesting project to how do you keep the internet as free as air, the air we breathe. There was something very interesting in that. But one of the more exciting projects that I got to work on recently was with Riot Games. For those that love to do gaming, Riot Games, two young guys who formed this company and exploded into a multi-billion-dollar gaming company. They were one of the first that I got to work with that wanted to have a leadership system. So they didn't want to have a hierarchical top-down thing. They wanted to, keep their business inventing through sort of a tribal system and non-hierarchical system. And that was fascinating to see how, that really worked for them.
So how many years ago was that? Because I'm also working a bit in a consulting capacity with another company that is decentralized as well. I don't know if they were using the term circle and spoke at Riot Games, but at this company, they're organized in circles and spokes instead of having like that traditional org chart that's very high top to bottom. Did they have something more?
They had a pretty strong allergic reaction to any kind of corporate terminology at the time. So it was more just, we don't want to subscribe to a thing. So it was interesting, although you're trying to help them put a system in place, they didn't want to call the system something. So although it was what we would call it is more of an ecosystem or network-based system, moving from an ego hierarchical system to an ecosystem where the teams could form. Yes, it's circles and spokes versus a hub and spoke model, that there's only central command and they wanted to build a whole bunch of them. But they didn't call it that. That was, how many years ago was that now? That's about 4 or 5 years ago.
I'm surprised because I thought it's like even a newer thing than that with this whole with the breakthrough of blockchain and all this crypto stuff, decentralization is becoming a hot topic in terms of blockchain. And I thought that only in the last couple of years has that now trickled into organizations. But 5 years ago is kind of the beginning of this blockchain conversation, I guess.
Yeah. So Be Courageous is really following a decentralized business model process. And we just made that pivot in November, just for full transparency to the audience. Like we wanted to disrupt the consulting model and the agency model, because I've worked in both for many, many years, but I believe that they're dying systems because they force a sense of isolation. You can only utilize what you have inside of your system, and it's hard to go out, because then you're breaking out your IP, you basically bringing on competitors, you're giving away your strategic advantage. We're pivoting from that, where we are moving to a more open-based and open source, if you think of it like staff on demand or just a decentralized network. If we can give away a lot of the central core practices and allow people that specialize in certain niche areas to go off and excel really well, and we can bring that information back together and learn together, it's almost like the shared brain. I think it's like the story of the 100 monkeys, right? I'm sure you guys have, I don't know if anybody's heard of the 100 monkeys, but there was the science experiment that there was an island of monkeys, and there was a one leader of the monkeys, moved on, and another leader took place, and there were these behaviors that started to happen in this tribe. And as soon as it tipped over the 100 monkeys on an island, like some distance away, which was also filled with monkeys, right at the moment that this island of 100 monkeys started to adopt this new behavior, this other island just started to adopt this new behavior. And so it started. And there's this idea that there's this tipping point where things start to shift and change when it comes out into the greater sense of awareness, and then everybody's more in service of a same central outcome. And I think that blockchain and decentralization, if you ever look, if you research online, this is getting a bit esoteric, but there's this idea of the synchronistic metronomes. And if you just look at a thing of synchronicity, you'll see somebody's put like 200 metronomes, and he's just put them going tick, 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 and they're all at different times. And at certain points, synchronicity, they all start to recalibrate to each other and actually rock at the same time. And it's this power of a greater sense of network allows you to yield a greater result. And I think that there's a shift that's happening in cultures and corporations, and blockchain is one of those examples. That's a format of it. But I think there's a much bigger principle underneath that to survive in this evolving future, drawing from the sum, like, leverage is, you guys are doing an amazing job at drawing out to this virtual world, and it's limitless about just the capacity of the amount of talent and resources that you can tap into to service your client base. And we're looking to do the same in service of larger breakthroughs that can actually influence the evolution of our planet, and human beings and corporations that have a lot of power. But I think that the decentralized model is, there are more people getting interested in it. Then I think the deeper that people explore into it, they're going to realize just how powerful it is. And you're not really giving anything away. You're creating a greater sense of shared outcome. Our job, I think, is to help elevate what is that outcome in service of. So one of the core things that we do is purpose work, purpose and brand platform work, where we help companies, organizations, and leaders. Like we worked with the CEO of Gap Inc. to help him figure out his purpose and then figure out the company's purpose, so that as they expand and grow, if you think of your business, I think Simon Sinek's about to bring out a new book called Infinity, or the Infinite Organization. I'm not sure what the title is, but the concept there is around, if you think about it in the long game, if you think about what you're doing in an infinite way, you will start to apply very different systems today, knowing that you have an infinite lifetime to achieve the thing that you're trying to achieve. And it gets you to think very differently about what you go after and the implications of those things. And I see a really big shift towards that. But it does require insane amounts of efficiency in order to achieve it. You have to marry big thinking and then radical efficiency and optimum efficiency to get there. I wanted to throw something out, Nick. If anyone that's listening, I'd love to find out if anyone has a question or a challenge, if you're open to that, a challenge that they're facing in some sort of headline. Maybe I can have a shot at answering that for them, or give an example of where we've helped like something.
Question.
Sorry?
If anyone has any questions, you can just post in the chat here, ask a question, and that'd be awesome. Until that happens, though, I have a couple other questions.
No, keep going.
So I think in theory, this decentralization is super interesting. What I've been seeing in practice, though, that there's benefits, but also if it's not set up properly, there can be a lot of bottlenecks, because since there's no hierarchy, there's a lot of potential inefficiencies where you don't know who to go to do something, because there's no like kind of path.
That's
so
right.
So how do you solve
that? Again, there's our approach to playing with the concept of decentralization, solving the challenges inside of that. Like I mentioned before, is the works best when everybody is clear on context of what that decentralized system is in service of. So if you just go, we're running a decentralized system, that's just Lord of the Flies. But if you're saying we're running a decentralized system because, like if you think of blockchain, because, we want to take on or break down a system of control, that one person holds all the keys, to the way a system works. And we think that the sum of many voices in this system is stronger than the power of one. Then you're operating from a different level. And I think that a decentralized system really works when there is a shared sense of context. So companies that are operating for us, our purpose of a decentralized network system is we want to assemble the right team to help our clients solve their toughest challenge, which means that we have to be open to realizing that I have and my direct team may have limitations on what we can give the client to get their breakthrough, and I may need to look outside. And so I'm very okay with that, because I'm in service of somebody else's breakthrough. I'm not in service of just my growth. I'm in service of someone else's breakthrough. So a decentralized system is the best vehicle for that. And then the self-organization system starts to come towards that higher sense of context, that higher sense of purpose.
I read a great book. Have you read Spider and Starfish, Unstoppable?
I have got.
It's really so. Basically, for those of you listening that haven't heard of this book, read the book. It's all about decentralized organizations, and not just in the context of a business organization. They also talk about government organizations and ISIS and things like that, which are all in itself organizations. Here, I'll post it for you, Michelle. But basically, the metaphor there is, let me just post it for you. There you go, Michelle. Basically, a spider has a head with 8 legs, so it represents like the old school style of an org chart. And if you cut off the head, which is like the CEO, the whole thing dies, right? Because it's really like coming from the top down. But a starfish, you can cut off an arm and it'll regrow, because there's no like head, you can say, like the center of it has like this, I forget what it's called with its nervous system, but it'll regrow, and it can still live even if you cut off one of the arms. And even though there's no head, all the arms somehow figure out how to communicate with each other so it can move in the same direction. So that's why the book is titled like that. But it was talking about the pros and cons of these things, and why it's so hard to defeat ISIS is because they're decentralized, and it's not like you can just go to one building, put a bomb on one building, and ISIS goes away. It's very decentralized, which makes it very difficult to defeat. And the book goes through a bunch of other examples. I really recommend it. I'm reading another book right now called Reinventing Organizations, which is, again, all about this decentralized stuff.
There's this may not be directly related to the topic of decentralization, but I think that there is and I hope I don't butcher this title. I think it's called Flight of the Creative Class. And there are two versions. There was an older version and then an updated version. And I have a feeling that this guy didn't realize that he was onto this concept of decentralization. But what he was looking, it was talking about the world's economy. What I'm really interested in is, where's the next breakthrough going to come from? Where's the next invention? And when I was very fascinated, deeply motivated by innovation and patent methodology, and which countries and which group thinks, where are people getting together and pushing the thinking of the world, and where does it come from, and why does it come from those places? He talked about that if you think of quantum theory, like it's matter never disappears. It just amasses somewhere and it moves somewhere else and it moves somewhere else. And he was saying that the flight of the creative class is, as our creative talent moves, we centralize or we decentralize from one place, and we'll then emerge somewhere else, and it pops up in the world that will spike. That suddenly China's getting its moment, and then Sweden gets its moment, and then that'll drop, and then South America pops up, and then all these places pop up, and talent moves around. And what I was fascinated reflecting on that book was this idea that I think with decentralization, what it's alluding to as well, and yes, there are pros and cons in it, but I think the overall pro in it is that you just never know where the breakthrough is going to come from. And the more that you stay connected to a larger network, like what you're doing with this, what you're doing with Leverage, what you're doing with this platform, what you're doing with these talks, you just never know where the next piece of information is going to come from. That's going to spark the next thought that leads to the next breakthrough. And I think that to think that it's only ever going to come from one place is what is killing innovation and killing organizational system. And I think decentralization is another way of flipping it back to say, connect to the larger network, be open to reading the tea leaves and seeing where those things come from. And of course, it has its cons, because we're trying to migrate from an old system of command and control and centralization, and one person knows everything. And there's still this polarity battle between this person's right and this person is wrong. And if you try to remove some of that and just say, it's neither right or wrong, it's just, what is the best answer for where we are in this moment in the evolution of this product, this system, this service, this economy?
And one big thing that I promote, which is a big core concept of this decentralization movement, is de-risking your company. When there's one person, that person's a bottleneck. Like,
right.
My business partner recently left the company, but since we were already structured in a fairly decentralized way. I mean, we've always been remote, but we've also been fairly decentralized, and we're big in process documentation and automation. Everything was documented, so that's a way to help you become more decentralized by having everyone's processes documented somewhere. It de-risks you in a similar way that, talking about decentralized organizations is de-risking you, where one person can leave, and even though you never want people to leave, you want to be set up in a way that you're not relying on just one person to do a job function.
Yeah, I think, and this is you probably see this on a daily basis, Nick. It's one thing that we have found when we go in and we do our work. One of our pieces of our process is to, for lack of a better word, do an audit. We try to understand if there's a challenge that a client of ours is looking to face. We ask two questions. What do you know about the challenge? What do you already know? And what do you have, as answers or thoughts against that challenge? And then what do you wish you knew? What don't you have an answer to? And very few clients want to answer that, because it puts them in a vulnerable position of not knowing everything. But that's usually where the breakthroughs come from, in the things that you wish you knew and the things that you don't have access to. But what we found is that in this audit, in what do you already know, we say, do you have these types of documents? Do you have these types of research documents? Do you have these types of things that you've done? Show me the previous systems that we're looking to better. They said, that was on that executive's laptop in this particular drive that was somewhere over here. We never got access to that. And so cultures and companies are reinventing the wheel on an annual basis, because some of the most incredible work leaves with their candidates because no one's figured out and everyone's too afraid to put this stuff into a shared place because of security, and people are going to find out what we're doing, and and unfortunately that hinders a company's ability to really excel, because then they have to spend a lot of time trying to remember what they already did, and that actually kills all the budget and the time to go out and find the new thing that's actually going to give them the differentiator.
Yeah, no, definitely. Keenan has a question. What's the ideal model to set up decentralized systems in business for a 1 to 10 headcount? So not to promote leverage, but we help in the sense that rather than you having an office with a bunch of people in one office, you can outsource certain things. And also using like a tool like Process Street, which you get with your membership, helps with decentralization on a small company, because you can, even if it's just you doing these processes now, the first step to becoming decentralized is put down on paper or on an electronic system, what are all the things that need to happen to run the company so that other people can do it. But Kyle, what's your take on that?
I 100% agree. I think that from a foundational perspective, I would still want to say that find out like your why, like why is a decentralized system right for your business? What kind of business are you in? What are you trying to achieve with that business? And why is the decentralized system right? So from a model perspective, I would say find your why, and always link to that. And the model that forms out of that is I wish I should do a screenshot. I could show you. If you know what it is you're trying to achieve, then I think you figure out where you are in relation to that today. You line up three different avenues in your decentralized model. Think about what your leadership and your management need to agree to promote and support a decentralized way of working. Think about the system and processes, like just what Nick said. Are you on Trello? Are you in Slack in your communication? Are you on Process Street? Are you on, like, what are the systems and processes that you have in place that support, promote, and nurture a decentralized model? How do you incentivize and reward your team members in your 1 to 10 headcount to operate effectively and hold themselves accountable? Because accountability is probably one of the most toughest things in a decentralized model. When you give a lot of freedom to people, you also have to set some enticing metrics into that. So, how do you reward somebody to nurture and operate well and effectively inside of a decentralized model? And then of course with your workflow, I would invite you to keep thinking about how your decentralized that system can continually advance. Like, don't sit still with it. Don't say that this is the one thing that we're going to do and this is the only thing we're going to do. The model to set up for a decentralized system in business is to keep reviewing what's working well for you and what's not working well for you. I would put that as a framework in for your 1 to 10 headcount. Set every couple of weeks, a month, a quarter, whatever it is that is in flow with your speed and cadence of your company. Review what is working and what's not, because that will keep you nurturing a decentralized system versus it imploding in on itself and causing people to silo. That's the only thing. I think Nick was mentioning this earlier. Decentralized systems can also, people will want to rally under stress and form these pods, which then create silos because they're like these mini centralized systems inside of a decentralized system. And so and in order for that not to happen, you want to have very effective communication and engagement amongst your teams. And Nick I'm sure can talk to a lot of really great apps and programs that can do that.
I've been trying to experiment with kind of like a hybrid. I think like the full-on pure decentralization, I think, is extremely tough for a lot of reasons. But I think like a hybrid approach is something that I've been finding a bit more success with. Just not to backtrack, but similar question to what I asked you before. Have you found a common, like with all the companies that you've worked with, the great ones, is there something that they just do that's better than, say, a company that is struggling a bit more or not? Is it culture? Is that the secret thing that all great companies have? Is it that they're constantly reinventing themselves? Is that related in some way that, part of your culture has to be to reinvent yourself? I guess, what is the secret sauce that some of these bigger companies or innovative companies have figured out?
Just to paraphrase or check a question for clarity, you're talking about the ones that have like sustained.
Well, I guess, they could have gone under, and they could have, I guess, still been innovative, I guess.
Yeah, the secret sauce. The secret sauce is, to me, is the idea. The model that's now being put out into the world is this idea of growth mindset or agile. I don't want to say that is the solution, but there's something in that which is there's actually we've built out a framework of 7 core principles. So I can answer it with that. I know that's quite a few things, but they're actually really important. And I'll just run through them real quick. And I can also send out a snapshot of it if you want to send it out to the folk after.
Yeah, whatever you send, we'll send out to everyone that registered.
I'll send a couple of little framework pieces just for they probably require a little bit of back-end explanation, but anyone's always welcome to ping myself and the team, and we'll try. So there's 7 things that we found, because we actually interviewed more than 70 plus Fortune companies. I personally worked with over a couple hundred brands on all different levels, and with this practice that we're in, we're always trying to find out what makes for more efficient teamwork, what makes for a more efficient organization, by way that we can create a system that when you recreate certain components, you will always get a breakthrough that allows you to stay relevant, current, and up to date. And so the 7 things that we found that are the secret sources, and not everybody is doing these 7. There's no one doing all 7, but each of them make up the 7. So the first is this thing called an ambidextrous mindset. And the ambidexterity is this concept that there are 2 worlds, an innovation world and an operation world. There's the world of creativity, and then there's a world of pragmatic operations. But these worlds are constantly in conflict with each other, and we can't be in both of them at the same time. But an organization that can, like an infinity symbol, cycle between them, knowing when is the right time to move the organization to a space of creativity and invention and discovery, and then a hardcore process of selection, and then operate and operationalize those things while testing and learning and realizing if any conflicts show up, you've got to go out of the operational mind into a more creative headspace in order to get the solution to bring back into the operations. That's an ambidextrous mindset. That has to come from the leadership top down. Secret sauce is if a leader can think in that way, an organization is set up for success. The second one is linking to your customer. So those that have strong customer engagement, meaning that they invent with their customer, they co-create with their customer. Apple were good. They could dictate and demand to the market, this is what you're going to have. Many companies are trying this and not succeeding because their product isn't superior enough, and the insights behind their products aren't superior enough to really answer an untapped and unmet need. So for you as a company, stay connected to your customer, find ways to always be communicating with them, always pressure testing, always incentivizing, always learning. If you have good dialogue with your customer, that will keep your business going, because you're always open, like, hey, they need this now. And there's a quadrant that we've created, which is like, if you're responsive, if you think of 4 buckets, if you're a responsive company, means you're dealing with the basic needs in the moment of a customer, that allows you to move to the next quadrant, which is this idea of self-sustaining. It means that you can, in a CEO language, that's how can I be the best in my category? If you're answering the basic needs, that allows you to anticipate what your customer wants, and that allows you to be the best. If you want to be the first, that moves you up, where you have to, when you've got those 2 things covered, you got to look for disruption. And in order to look for disruption, that keeps you ahead. And for the ones that are even more advanced, they go to a place called blue sky, which is to say, I'm just going to go and look for things that people aren't even asking for, and look for the conflicts that may be coming in the future of this category or my business. And if I can find that, I create the first disruption, I can defend my best position, and I can respond in real time. So that idea of customer mindset. The other ones I'll spin through real quick are that you want to have a strategy. It sounds silly, but some companies don't actually have a strategy. They just kind of wing it. It's important to have. It's true. They don't. You want a short, medium, and long-term strategy. You want to think of them in horizons. What am I doing? And look, these days, more than a year out is kind of a ridiculous exercise, but it's still a good one to do. We help companies think 30 years out. It sounds ridiculous, but it actually works, because what they're doing is they're anticipating where their business could go.
One of our team members that we've just hired was a senior operations person at Toyota, and she said at Toyota they have a 100-year plan.
Yeah, and this is moving in that direction. I was talking about the infinity mindset. A company that thinks like, I work with a first-class sergeant of the American Special Forces, and he was telling me one of the most things that I've carried with me very dearly from those sessions was he talked about different countries and how they think in their strategic war scenarios. Like Africa, where I'm from South Africa, for those wondering my accent. They think in the next day. What can I get the next day or the day after that? And then there are other countries and cultures that will think in a week, they'll think in a month, some will think in years, 10-year strategies, and the Asian cultures think in 100-year. And that influence of thinking 100 years out is starting to influence, companies that think that way. It's starting to influence Western mindsets and older mindsets. So.
Should every company be thinking on those time horizons, or if you're a 2-year-old company, you should just be hyper focused on like 1 year or less, and only once you kind of hit a certain critical mass or a certain tipping point should you start thinking these 30-year time horizon?
It's a great question. I think the way that a young company should be thinking if you're 2 years out is I still think that the twofold is figure out your why. Why you're doing what you're doing, not for your exit strategy. That's a how or a what. Your why is like, why do you think the business that you're creating is important for people? What are you trying to solve for people? And it isn't just, it could be time efficiency. It could be, making life more productive and more enjoyable, like something really big and meta that actually chunks up out of your business. When you have that, then you link in, which is like what I need to do today, what I need to do this week, this month, this year, 10 years to try and keep working towards achieving this. And often that why is going to, what I would recommend is that think about it in a thing that might be unachievable for you. Because then what it allows you to do is that is like an infinity plan. That's like a 100-year plan. I want to try and, help 1 billion people do blah. But what can I do today to impression or infect or convert that one person? What can I do next week? And what that allows you to do, if you've got something really big, it allows you to pivot really quickly. If you think the one thing that you created this year suddenly becomes irrelevant in a year, or competition beat you to the market or something like that, if you're holding on to a much bigger why of why you were doing this in the first place, it'll allow you to adapt to a different type of framework without killing yourself and killing your investment and things. So I do think that the mindset is have a why, and then think in short increments on a daily basis, weekly, monthly basis on how to get there.
This is awesome. I want to be respectful of your time, but just for all of you listening in that are Leverage members, Kyle is in our Slack channel, in the Leverage members Slack channel. So if you have questions, I'm sure he's willing to. I'm speaking for Kyle now, but I'm sure if you ask him questions, say, "Hey, I listened to the webinar. Can you explain this?" I'm sure he's 100% answer, and any materials that you have that you could share with us in that channel, that would be awesome.
I'll do so. Yeah, I'll do so. And and if anybody's got any other questions, real quick, I'm happy to.
How can people, apart from finding you in our Slack, like what's your website? How can people, if they want to learn more on having a breakthrough or having a chat with you to see if it's a good fit for the consulting, where should they go and find you?
So Be Courageous Innovation. It's a pretty long address. We're battling right now the people that own all the short URLs to try and find a better price point to win back our website addresses. So Be Courageous Innovation. I'll put it in the tab for you.
Is there a URL extension for .be? You could buy courageous.be maybe.
We've looked at a few things. I've actually finally found. I'm not going to mention it because somebody else might go and buy it quickly.
I'm on GoDaddy right now. Just tell me.
They'd haggle me for the price. Yeah, some guys. There was one guy wanting $25,000 for this URL address. I was like, that's good business. If you're winning in that, I'm very impressed. But I was saying thanks, but no thanks. You can take a look there. It's a very we've got a new version with a lot more links and stuff coming up in the next couple months. That's just more of a philosophical overview. You can get me directly at Kyle.Hermans. I'll put that here if you want. What I'll do, make sure I spelled that right. Okay. And what I'll also do is I'll send a couple things. We have something called the task headline form, which is for any of you trying to figure out challenges for your business. I have a small framework we've been pioneering over the last few decades, which asks you 5 simple questions to you about your challenge and what you've thought of before. It's a really good way for you to just put your thoughts down on paper. If anybody's interested, I'll send out a workbook for you guys, which is how you can craft your best year yet for your business. It's like a manual of for this year. I know we already one Q in, but if you're trying to figure out your why, or you're trying to figure out why you're in business or where you want to take your business, this is a pretty comprehensive framework resource that you can just fill it in for yourself. Otherwise, just if you've got questions about anything, I'll send you a couple models if you want. And but if you've got any questions, or your business wants to have a conversation, we are pretty insanely busy, but I will always make the time. We can jump on a call 30-40 minutes, and I'll see if I can do my best to answer any questions that you guys might have based on the experience that we've had.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. I think everyone would want to get those materials. Well, yeah. Thanks for being on the show, and I'm sure that we'll find another date to have another recap show sometime this year. And thanks for listening in, guys. I'll see you next week.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Brittany, as well. A big shout out to the Leverage team for making this possible, and to all the people that tuned in. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.